Welcome to the River Ran Through It video presentation. We will talk about our resilience, teamwork, and reimagining the library after a disaster. First, let me introduce our team. Harvey is our circulation specialist. Ann McGittigan is a circulation coordinator. Jennifer Martinez is the division's operation manager. And Mika Mitchell is a reference librarian and the narrator of this video. Lone Star College-Kingwood Library was built in 1984. One of the original buildings within campus was established. Kingwood was the second building to be built. Today, we now have 7 campuses across the north half of the greater Houston area. Over the years, the library, located on the first floor, had some cosmetic remodeling to accommodate the various department needs and stylistic flavors, but it never had any infrastructure upgrades. We dropped power lines from the ceiling to accommodate the growing use of electronic devices. We squeezed in classes of 25 or more students into a tiny 20-computer lab. Our circulation and reference service desks were on opposite sides of the building. All we wanted was to get new carpet. We were getting ready for the semester to start when we were given directives to leave early on Friday, August 25th, 2017, to prepare our homes for the incoming hurricane. Not anticipating the level of destruction, we made our way home and settled in for the storm. Following social media and the news, we watched as the water line kept rising, some in our neighborhoods and homes. Awestruck by the power of nature, we started to receive text messages from the library director checking in on all of us and letting us know that the normal start to the semester was on hold until our administration team was able to assess the damage on campus. What happened was the dams north of us opened their channels, releasing a greater level of water that caused the San Jacinto River to rise over its banks and wash through the surrounding areas, including our campus. 6 of the 9 buildings were affected. In addition to the water, half a mile north of the campus, sewage facilities backed up, causing plumbing to reverse direction and join the swells of water in the buildings. The buildings sat for days with biohazardous water in them. Once our campus leadership could assess the damage, a remediation team was quickly brought in to clean up the mess left behind. An art team worked to salvage framed items, while others tried to box up non-porous items. Everything was lost within the library building. All our personal effects, all the books, all the computers, all the furniture. You get the picture. We could not have imagined nor anticipated what was to come. 2 weeks after Harvey hit, all the full-time employees met at a local Presbyterian church to learn the details of the destruction and the plans for moving forward. We were all in shock. This was the last time we were all together in one place for some time. While the campus was getting fenced off, and remediation of the buildings was underway, we began to figure out how we would adjust to the new situation. Classes were going to start 4 weeks late to give everyone a chance to set up the courses and figure out spaces for new classes. Staff was busy changing 75% of the face-to-face classes to online ones. Faculty had no access to any of their teaching material that was left in their offices, some gone forever. computers were collected from across the Lone Star College system and distributed to employees. VPN access was given out freely to the Kingwood employees. And unlike this current situation, our staff was not permitted to work remotely, while faculty, including librarians, could. Our full-time team met several times wherever we could, including at Mika's home, to discuss our game plan. We wanted to make sure that our part-time employees were still able to work and earn a much-needed income, to ensure students still got access to resources that they needed, and to help and support faculty and students quickly learning how to use the learning support system, D2L. Finding workspace became challenging in the beginning and floated around the unaffected student conference center with a tray table, many times in front of the bookstore. Electrical outlets were a valuable commodity. Allison and a couple of part-time circulation staff were stationed in a cozy little corner of the campus bookstore where a makeshift studio was set up to issue ID cards. The only piece of equipment that was salvaged in working condition was the camera. Everything else was borrowed from other campuses or departments unaffected by the flooding. Jennifer and one full-time librarian camped in a newly built study room in the student conference center, while another librarian worked in a mobile computer lab helping students. Mika and the library director were stationed at a community center north of campus where Lone Star rented space used for continuing education and lifelong learning programs. The rest of the part-time team were assigned to work at Kingwood Center, the Atascocita Library. We take for granted our routines and our normal work life. When everything is turned upside down, we learned how limited we are in doing many of our daily tasks. We had no remote access to our ILS Symphony. Many documents were lost because they were saved on our computers or flash drives in our offices and not onto system servers or cloud storage accounts. We had to create new or recreate procedures. Jennifer and Mika worked on disaster grants offered by the Texas State Library and Archives and the Texas Library Association to help get funding for print and digital material while the campus was on a spending freeze. The library was awarded $10,000 to purchase course material that we put on reserve and ebooks to help with research assignments we knew would remain the same. To help with FEMA and insurance process, Jennifer and Mika created an itemized inventory list of everything that was in the library, listing everything from tables to bookends to staplers, and pulled reports of all the Kingwood items from the catalog. And with Allison and their part-time team, they painstakingly went through each item, releasing finds and holds, and preparing them all to be deleted from the catalog. Over 40,000 books were lost, amounting to $1.5 million. The librarians made new instructional material and LibGuides. They hid all the print material listed in the LibGuides, and Mika even had a go at conducting MLA workshops through YouTube livestream for some English classes. Anne worked over at a sister campus, North Harris, where she collaborated with their circulation department and created an inventory process for the new two-system LIS. Throughout this entire experience, Allison was the Professional and Support Staff Association president. She was a strong advocate for our staff on our campus. By the spring semester, we started to fall into routines. There was some location reshuffling. One of the librarians went on an already planned sabbatical. Another retired but stayed on part-time, leaving Mika to keep things going. Mika moved to the Student Conference Center, and the team was eventually able to secure a newly vacated conference room where more team members could comfortably sit and work together. This became an important bonding time that leads to greater things to come. Walls were taken down. Between being in a biohazardous space and without climate control storage for many months, any salvaged books were discarded for the health and safety of everyone. As the sense of shock wore off, grief and fear set in. What was going to happen to our jobs? How will the space be rebuilt? Will we have a say in it? In the meetings early on, we were told that due to FEMA regulations, the build back would be 1-for-1. This was interpreted to mean the exact same. Mika asked why it had to be. Our team started to look ahead to the future. We started to imagine the many possibilities of the renewed library space. We started our exploratory adventure in April 2018 by going to the Texas Library Association conference in Dallas to wander the exhibit halls and collect some great and exciting ideas. Over 2 months, our team would drive around the greater Houston area to see and gather ideas from academic libraries. Between the cozy workspace around the conference table and riding in Jennifer's Jeep, the team's dynamic grew and changed. We started to become a solid work family. Bonding time let us get to know one another in a new way. We learned to talk to one another better. The growing trust allowed us to speak candidly and not take things personally. Different library departments lived and worked so closely together that we began to see the library more than just our separate service units. We had fun and got excited about endless possibilities, especially when we found local examples of things that we wanted to implement from our tour around the TLA exhibit hall. We collected our ideas, notes, and pictures to create a vision book that we then presented to the architects. We noted advice from others' recent renovation experience and challenges that other departments faced in communicating with the architects. We knew we had to be all on the same page to ensure that our voice was heard and maintained credibility. We presented problems both from our own space and experiences shared by other libraries that we visited for the architects to solve. While we were daydreaming, the rest of the buildings were under construction. Classes started to move back on campus in the spring of 2018 with temporary buildings set up in a parking lot. One building that had been inaccessible due to HVAC issues reopened along with the second floor of the library building where classes were held. There was an organizational shuffle that took place, which included a change in leadership and the library becoming part of a division with learning support services and professional development. Math and writing tutoring would be embedded into the space. We quickly filled in our new team members about our ideas and got them on board. Our interim director, Kaylee Vondervoor, who would later be named our Dean of the Instructional Support Division, met regularly with the rebuild group that included the architects, contractor, facilities director, the technologies director, and campus administration. We would be randomly called to meet with her to make quick decisions about the space. We spent hours debating color schemes and fabric patterns. And by that summer, we were relocated to the administrative building that was not affected by the storm and had office spaces available for us to use and a lab that we could take over as a temporary library space. Jennifer had an office, 2 librarians squeezed in together to share an office until another desk became available. When Anne and Allison were not working in the lab, they shared an office with Kaylee. We got excited when we watched the construction team tear down the brick walls. Despite some supply issues with door locks and other punch list items, all classes were officially back on campus. While everyone was settling into their new workspace and learning some new technology on the first floors of the other buildings, we were patiently waiting. Construction finally started in the library, much to the annoyance of the classes above. The raised flooring was installed first to allow for power to be available all over the open space. Part of the ceiling was lowered to help the sound issues. Plumbing and electrical units were upgraded to the current building code standards. We alternated between one another to visit the space as construction was taking place, making sure no issues stood in the way. We spent the fall and spring going through RFPs, negotiating contracts and getting the legal department to sign off on them, making IDs, teaching classes, supporting students, and building a small book collection. We were originally told that we would be moving into our new space in around spring break. If you've ever had any construction work done on your personal or professional spaces, you know that didn't happen. New databases were set up, new equipment was ordered, new processes were being established, while we patiently watched as the space began to take its new shape. We moved in mid-May of 2019, 18 months after Hurricane Harvey hit. We were over the moon with how the space turned out. It's bright, colorful, open, functional, and student-friendly. We opened to the public mid-June. We have 2 collaborative stations with mediascapes. We replaced the photocopiers with high-end book scanners. Our now called Learning Commons is the only open lab on campus with all the remodels. Because of that, we were able to be the first campus in our system to have a laptop kiosk where students can borrow a device for 4 hours to use anywhere on campus. We got an 80 computer lab that can transition into 2 labs and is built as a safe space in case of an emergency, which we tested out on January 30th of this year with a lockdown due to a false alarm call about an active shooter near the campus. Our book collection arrived mid-July. We blocked off the stacks while we shelved all the items to check, organize, and double-check everything. It took about 3 to 4 weeks until we were able to finally open the stacks and let people browse the 6,000 book collection, 13% of what it once was. We have seen a higher level of traffic in the Learning Commons than we ever had when it was called the library. Our community immediately fell in love with the space. Last thing to be set up was our 1-button recording studio, which opened this spring. While we hope you picked out some treasures from our story, we wanted to highlight some lessons that we found to be so valuable in this entire experience. Be kind to yourself and others. Times like these are rough and you can only do so much. Don't expect outsiders to understand your situation because they won't. Just breathe. Work together and support one another. Recognize the different skills, strengths, and perspectives in your team. Together they create a well-rounded vision. Voice your opinions constructively because your opinions matter. Don't be afraid to ask. The worst that can be said is no. Be open-minded. Step out of your comfort zone and be willing to try and learn new things. Leadership must advocate for the needs of your team and the community you serve. Have a clear vision that everyone is on board with. You don't want to look divided in front of others making those decisions. And be sure to communicate regularly with your team. The worst thing that can happen is for people to fill in the blanks with imaginative, anxious-driven stories. If you're interested to hear more of our story, listen to Choice's new podcast called Patron Driven. In addition to this video, we've created a LibGuide with additional resources and our email addresses. We welcome your questions. By telling our story, we hope that others will have an easier path if faced with a similar situation.